Welcome, Principal Matters podcast listeners. We're so excited for today's interview. I am Jen Schwanke, and I'm here with my friend Will Parker, and we have a great show to you today. Will is talking with Joshua Yeager, and there's
Yeah.
so many good things that you guys cover in this episode. I can't wait for our listeners to hear it. But we are going to start with our favorite, or at least my favorite, Will, part of our episodes, and that's the question of the week. As a reminder, the question of the week is supported by Summer Pops Math Workbooks. Principles: when students practice math over the summer, you know what happens. Math scores go up. So it's time to think about your summer math plan this year. And a great way to start is by ordering those free summer workbook samples at summerpopsworkbooks.com. Okay, so let's think, Will, about our question of the day. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. How can leaders address the issue of teachers expecting every office referral to lead to a discipline situation, a discipline response, and improve classroom management? And so, we sometimes will, when we get a question from one of our listeners, we know exactly the feelings that are behind this question. So I sense some feelings in this and some frustration, but why don't you take a crack at this first?
Well, you and I have both had a lot of experience in student discipline. Like it or not, I was an assistant principal for 9 years before I became a principal, and you're an AP and a principal. And you know those roles both are pretty heavy depending on where you are in student discipline, but especially roles of APs. And if I remember correctly, this question may have come from a group of APs that I was working with. Regardless, when you're sitting in an office situation or you get a call to come down and there's a child waiting for you or a student waiting for you, it's before I was a principal, as a teacher, I just kind of would imagine what that was like. I'm sending them down there and I want them to be read the riot act, and I want them to be disciplined, and I want them to be reminded of how they're supposed to behave in my class, and I want them to come back and everything's going to go forward without a hitch. Then when you're on the other side of that and you're the one managing those situations, you realize every one of those situations is so different, because sometimes teacher perceptions and kid perceptions are not the same. Your perception and their perception may not be the same. And regardless, if you're the one that's asked to manage the situation, now you have to build a relationship and rapport with the student and trust so that you can actually then guide them towards better behavior, because punishment or discipline alone is not going to change behavior. And so there's this big dynamic involved in leadership where you need to both, one, show enormous support for the teachers who take the time to remove his child from their room, because they need to know they're supported and they deserve to be supported. And at the same time, an enormous amount of support for students to improve their behavior. And so, man, Jen, this question is what pulls me in. So I'm going to say something really practical at the first. At the beginning of every school year, when I covered norms on student behavior with students and with teachers, I set the expectations for all my students of these are the behaviors that we expect to be like. But then I set expectations for teachers, and I tell them on the front what happens when the student leaves your care to come to mine. And when they leave your care to come to mine, these are the options available, but the decision for which option would be applied will be mine. And as soon as you send them out of your care to mine, I get to be the one who decides what that care and how it will be applied. And I think it's really important to communicate on the front end what those expectations are, so there's no confusion over those expectations when you apply them. So I'll start there, because I know this is just a 5-minute Q&A and this could be a whole episode, but I would just be really clear on what my expectations are for kids and teachers, so there's no confusion as to how you get to be the one who makes the decision on what those options are once they're in your office. Thoughts and reflections?
Here's my reflection. Maybe this was the best PD I ever led. Maybe not, but it was close. And it was just with my leadership team in my building. And I said, okay, I know there's a lot of stress and second guessing my discipline decisions. So let's just do a little roundtable. So, okay, we have student, let's call him Brandon, and Brandon punches Brandy in the face. You send me Brandon. What should happen? And they're like, well, he gets suspended. Great. I said, well, let's add a detail. And then I added a detail. Brandy's been bullying him for a while. Okay, they said, and that Brandon gets suspended and Brandy gets in-school suspension. Okay, great. Let me add a detail. Brandy's moved 14 times in 16 years. How does that change it? And I kept adding components. I kept adding and kept adding them. And every time they'd be like, oh, okay. And they would go back to the drawing board. And I added like, I don't know, 10, 12 components. And in the end, they're laughing and they're like, we have no idea what to do. And I'm like, that's the problem. That's what happens, you guys. I get a student, I start unpacking it. One of the first things they're going to say is, my teacher is so mean. She yells at me all the time. I'm always in trouble. That's a component. And it might not even be true, but there I am as the principal thinking, okay, wait, is this a personality problem with the teacher or the kid? Anyway, my point being, that is a really powerful PD. And I have since helped lead that in several leadership teams. I'd be happy, by the way, to talk on the phone with anybody about how that can work. And it was really helpful because the teachers, the leadership team learned firsthand how just another detail changes everything.
Jen, I love that so much, because what you did was you gave teachers context for the decisions that were being made, which is, I wanted to add this thought in addition to that too, to kind of circle back to add an end to what I said at the beginning. It's just as important as it is to set those expectations at the beginning. I also think it's really important for you to follow up with teachers anytime you've dealt with a child that's been involved in some reason they've sent them to you. Now, I know there's principals right now listening to me like, well, you don't know how big my school is. I have 2,500 kids. I see 15, 25, 30 kids a day. And I'm just telling you that if you are seeing students or children that teachers have referred and you're not communicating back with them what your follow-up was, their assumption is you did nothing. If their assumption is you did nothing, then they'll feel unsupported, even if you just supported them all day long.
Right.
And so you got to figure out some mechanism by which you can let them know. If it's a small situation like a tardy to a class or something, you can shoot a quick email. Just met with your kid earlier today based on your referral. Wanted you to make sure you know I did this. Or some people I know set that up in their student information system where they just put notes and give teachers access to the notes. Or if it's a situation that's involved some drama, I'm just going to use that word, between the teacher and the student, I always go back in person and find that teacher and say, hey, let me just get some context. Let me make sure you know how I followed up on this. Or sometimes I even bring the student down to help resolve that. Or I might set up a meeting during that teacher's plan to bring that student in or them to my office so we can resolve this conflict. There's no one way to do this. But the point is, if teachers don't know on the back end some of the things that you've been doing to help manage those behaviors, it's the human nature. The absence of knowledge is always fulfilled with the gap of people's negative assumptions. And so,
okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know we're out of time. I just have to say this. One of the tricks that worked for me, for those principals who are like, it's not sustainable what you're saying, is have them come to you. I used to feel so bad if I didn't get to the teacher and, in between classes and tell them. I would send an email saying, hey, I worked through it with Will, with your student Will, drop by after school and I'll let you know more. Because then if they really want to know, they'll be there. If they're like, no, I'm good, they'll go home. So that puts the onus on them to find you for more information.
Jen, I wish I could rewind 8 years, 9 years.
I know.
And keep doing that more often. Thank you for that. Well, I know this is a Q&A, and I know we're getting ready for an amazing conversation with my friend Josh Yeager. You're going to love this, Principal Matters listeners. But Jen, thank you for that feedback. And Principal Matters listeners, if you have questions that you want us to chew on, we will do our best to answer them in these short sessions. But you can always find out lots and lots of information on these kinds of questions in books by Jen Schwanke called like You're the Principal, Now What? Or How to Manage Conflicts. Or you can read Principal Matters, my first book, if you want to get some ideas on student discipline. But whatever you're doing this week, thank you for your commitment to learning, and thank you for doing what matters. And you can always find our resources at williamdparker.com. And Jen, how can they stay connected with you?
Yep. Reach out to me at jenschwanke.com. You'll find a place to email me there.
Thanks, Jen. Principal Matters Podcast, episode 432. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. This week, we're going to talk about Be the Shift with my special guest, Joshua Yeager. Principal Joshua Yeager, a graduate of Mississippi State University, is a dedicated researcher with over a decade of leadership experience. He's the principal of Perry Central High School in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which serves 400 students. In his third year as principal, he is proud to know every student by name. Under his leadership, the school has increased its graduation rate by 18%, raised its accountability scores by 100 points, and the daily average attendance rate to 85%. Principal Yeager has also directed public and private education institutes throughout the South, including facilities for those with special needs. As a turnaround principal, he uses innovation to maximize student and stakeholder potential. A Hattiesburg resident, he collaborates with Mississippi's Associations for School Leaders and is actively writing his first book, Turning Poverty into Riches, Rural Education at its Best. He's the proud father of Macklin Grace, a junior at Union High School in Mississippi. Joshua Yeager, welcome to Principal Matters Podcast. And can you fill in the gaps on that intro and tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you?
Wow. Well, thank you so very much. You did such a great job like you always do. But I will say, I guess one thing that many people on this podcast may not know is I also pastor a local church here in our community, and it's really been a huge benefit for us here in the county. I guess outside of that, it's all about education for me, Will. So, but thank you so much for having me join your wonderful show. I feel like I'm a seasoned veteran listening to Will Parker and Jen Schwanke, because I can remember years ago listening to you guys when y'all first started off, and I've followed you ever since. So it's very exciting to be on the show with you today.
Well, it's so exciting to talk to you, Josh. We've connected offline, and by the time this comes out, we will have, Lord willing, had dinner together in Baton Rouge. I'm coming down to Louisiana to speak in you guys. I'm going to be hosted there by the Louisiana State Association, but I've also done work with the Mississippi State Association and our good friends there. And so I'm just so happy that I get to bring you into this conversation. I will say this about being a pastor. I have talked to a lot of principals, as you know, and I know a lot of people in ministry. There's just so much in common, Josh. I think between the work that a principal does and the work that a minister does in terms of having your arms wrapped around the community. Talk about that for a little bit, and about why, as a community builder, it's so important for you to know every student's name.
Well, in many rural schools, and it works just the same in urban education as well. But here in Perry County, the old cliche saying, you got to just sit at the table with people. Well, my philosophy is you got to eat at the table with people. People do not really care, how much knowledge we have in our minds and our brains. They really care about, are you authentic, and are you one of us, so to speak. So as far as having community support, when I first got to Perry Central 2 years ago, I knew exactly what I had to do. After I looked at the school data, I had to go into the community. I began to old school style, visit a lot of the churches in the community, and I've always been in church, and it's just the door opened. The people invited me to come, and you're exactly right, Will. I'm not a perfect preacher. I'll just go and tell you, I'm not one of those that a lot of people label. I'm very innovative and a little bit different, but I will say this: it's all about coaching people. It's all about maximizing their greatness and stepping out of the way and letting them shine. And if you're humble and you remain to support people, whether it be student scholars or teachers or people in the community, stakeholders at large, they're going to have you back, because it's not about us anymore. It's about them.
Oh, I love that. You're reminding me of a story. I'm stealing this quote from you. You don't just need to sit at the table with people. You need to eat at the table with people. One morning I came into school. This is a long time ago, when I was an assistant principal, and I was I was the first one there. You know how that is. You get to school, you're the one opening it. And then walks this dad. He's also up really early, and he's hot. He's upset about something that happened the day before. He wants to have a hard conversation. And so right before, instead of jumping into the middle of it, I just looked at him and said, "Hey, hold on a second. Have you had breakfast?" And he was like, no. And I was like, well, I haven't either. How about let's go grab some breakfast and a cup of coffee, and then we'll talk about what you're concerned about. And the whole temperature just went down. And we went down to the cafeteria. We got a plate. We sat
Yeah.
down. We went back, and we had a much better conversation, Josh, sitting at
Yeah.
the table together and eating together than we did, as folks. I'm sure you can relate to that.
Absolutely.
Talk
I,
about what you're most proud of when it comes to Perry High School. Let's just go there first, because you are in a place where every single day you get to see your students, um, of course, in their best and worst moments. But let's brag on Perry High School. What are some things going on there that you're really proud of?
Will, when I first started talking about coming to Perry Central, a lot of my friends in our movement, a lot of people in the education said to me, they said, they call me by my last name. They said, Yeager, don't go there. Like, don't go there. But me, that motivated me. Well, let me do some research and see what that's all about. I mean, there was a lot of, and not in a nasty way. There was just like, you need to go to a bigger place, or you've been to schools that's 12, 1,300 kids, and now you're going to this small rural school. What don't, but the very first day I stepped foot in Perry County, I had already scheduled a meeting with two of my top student leaders. And from that very first meeting, I could sense that these children here were great kids, some of the smartest kids that I've ever had the privilege of working with, but they've never had an opportunity. So it became more of a passion for me, not just to move, because that's a headache. A lot of high school principals, 3 or 4 years and it's a wrap. They go on, but consistency is so important, especially in rural education. In these small towns, we've got three communities in this county, and we all come together. The motto I started was better together, and man, that ran like wildfire. I got this big 24-foot flag banners out by the major highway in front of my school, and it's better together, and they absolutely love it. But I will tell you, the most exciting thing was to see the smile on the kids' faces when I would say things like, no, we're going to have pep rallies. I mean, this school didn't even have pep rallies. This school, the spirit was really, really dry. But when I began to listen to the students, tell me what you want as in high school. When I began to listen to the parents, tell me what it is that you would desire. I could see a burning fire inside of them, whether it be a supervisor from the county, whether it be a mom or a grandparent or a student or a teacher. The very first thing I did was I had a whole week of meetings with students and stakeholders and teachers so I could get a sense of where they were. And most of the time, you may not can necessarily agree, and we as school leaders know what we can and can't do, but just sitting there listening to them makes them feel like they have a voice and that they're being. And it goes forward. So to answer your question, the smile on these people's faces, because there's been a lot of smiles, a lot of first-time opportunities for them.
There's just so much wisdom, Josh, in what you just explained. And so I just want to speak directly to Principal Matters listeners, because a lot of times when I'm working with leaders and they're struggling with that next thing, or they're struggling with that challenge, or they're struggling with the idea of how do I improve fill in the blank, it's really surprising to me how many times a principal may be struggling with that alone, but when they're invited to come back to the things, what has worked in the past that has helped you discover what to do. A lot of times what's worked in the past is exactly what you described, Josh, which is I pulled together my people and I asked them about this problem, my students, my teachers, my community members, and guess what? We found the solution together. And so there's just so much power in staying connected to the people that you're serving, and making sure that that the direction that you're going is not just Josh's direction; it's our directions. What do you want to add to that?
Well, I think for the most part, and it's all in the numbers. When I first got here, this high school averaged 70% graduation rate every year, which was terrible. That means 30% of our graduates or students who are old enough to graduate were not graduating. Now we're at 90%, 91, 92%. We've put a whole lot of things in place, but these families to see their child. And a lot of this in South Mississippi in rural education, a lot of these are sometimes first-time graduates in their families, and it just ignites fire. Now we have parents enrolling in the local community college. We have parents coming back, going through getting the GED programs. We have a community now that has become educated, but also they have become active on their voice. And when you give students a voice and parents a voice, I'm in year 3 now, and now I'm kind of taking a seat back, and I'm letting all of my people be great. And it's so much fun.
So there's a couple of things you've said to me in conversations we've had offline, which is seeing your teachers as practitioners,
Yes.
understanding the power of flexible schedules. So go whichever direction you want to go, Josh, but talk about why those have been important parts of what you've done to transform your school.
Will, I think when I first started listening to you and Jen years ago, I said I've met my match, because I was one of those geeky gurus who just loved reading about education. You did a show a couple of weeks ago about just driving by random schools and wanting to pull in the drive and see the schools, because you wanted to check the layout. I said, I resonate with that. But I will say this, teachers are practitioners. Oftentimes in our movement, when I speak of the movement, I'm talking about our movement as a whole. We've got to understand that teachers make the difference. And they are practitioners. When you go to a local hospital or the clinic or your doctor's office, they're going to give you a bunch of tests, and they're going to give you the whole diagnostics, and they're going to take a look, and they're going to try to diagnose you. Teachers do that every day. Effective teachers do that every day. It is a practice. It's reflective leadership. When we sit around and do our critical friend groups, and teachers are struggling in certain areas about how to get this student or how to get this student, we come together and we look at resources like What Works Clearinghouse and several other different venues. But the best tool are when teachers have the liberty to teach, and when teachers feel like they are supported. When I call my teachers practitioners, that lights them up, because they feel respected and appreciated. And that's what we got to do as school leaders. We have got to refocus on our movement and really support our educators, because it's difficult out there. It's trying now. It's not like it was 10 years ago. It's not like it was 20 years ago. And we've got to be creative in what we do with our teachers.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Everyone talks about the power of data-driven instruction, but what does that actually look like? Look no further than IXL, the ultimate online learning and teaching platform for K-12. IXL gives you meaningful insights that drive real progress, and research can prove it. Studies in nearly all 50 states show that schools that use IXL outperform other schools on state tests. Educators who use IXL love that they can easily see how their school is performing in real time to make better instructional decisions. And IXL doesn't stop at just data. IXL also brings an entire ecosystem of resources for your teachers with a complete curriculum, personalized learning plans, and so much more. It's no wonder that IXL is used in 95 of the top 100 school districts. Ready to join them? Visit IXL.com/PM to get started. Hi, friends. Did you know that Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, has been downloaded over 1.5 million times? We are so proud to share conversations, interviews, and resources to support leaders like you who are serving school communities worldwide. And I'd like to invite you to explore our books, our professional development offerings, our Grow Academies, our masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations, because we're here to help you and your teams build schools that you're proud to call home. So here's my question. How are you planning to keep growing in the semester ahead? We're booking events right now for the next 2 years, and we would love to serve you in person or virtually. So visit williamdparker.com and click services, or email me at will@williamdparker.com to connect. I would love to hear from you. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of today's show.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Well, I love that. And I'm just going to pull out something you and I both know. This has been out for more than 10 years, but when the Wallace Foundation did its research on what were the factors that created the most impact on student learning in schools, you and I both know the very first most important factor that influences student growth is the quality of their teacher. Number one, hands down. Guess what number two is? The role of the principal.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a principal to recognize that the front line, the most important people that are going to touch the lives and impact the lives of these students every day are my teachers. So valuing and honoring that, and then recognizing my support of them, my equipping of them, my being a champion for them, is also going to make an impact on that student outcome, because both of those things are just so true. What have you learned about flexible schedules, especially in a rural setting? How has it helped?
It has helped out tremendously. I'll tell you, I was at MASSP back over the summer, and I'll tell you, we have some great administrators in the state of Mississippi. I mean, we went from 50th to 30th on the state DOE model. We really have some innovative, great leaders here. But I began to put my head together to try to figure out how can I maximize student potential and student progress through more of an explicit approach. And far as our Mississippi accountability model, our ACT work keys, and our lowest performing students and growth of all is very important. Tier 1 instruction, of course, is the bedrock for students to have success. But so what we've created is every day we have a 48-minute block called Bulldog Block. On Mondays, we work on social and emotional learning. The state now requires for that, but we talk about, not only do we just talk about it, but we really make it active in learning, because our students, they go through so much, and even our teachers. So the social and emotional components that we embed in that 48-minute is very therapeutic. You can walk down the hallways and you can hear the music. You can hear the stories navigating, and as the kids sit around in circles and they talk about their problems, their daily problems. That has been so helpful for the mental health of our students. On Tuesdays, we do Level All, which is career success and career planning. That 48-minute time expounds upon, ninth graders building their career paths, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. All of the college and workforce embodiment is what we call, it's through Level All, and it's a great program. Absolutely free to any public school in the country, but it's amazing. And then on Wednesdays, we do remediation, where our MAP teachers pull out those students, and then we have some of our non-MAP teachers pulling out doing ACT. I have an interventionist that goes around and also spot checks with our students. And then Thursdays, of course, is going to be ACT and ACT work keys, which we've seen some students having 8 and 9 point increases over the last year. We now have met or surpassed the state ACT average. Our students are excelling with the ACT. It's very, very exciting. And then on Fridays, which is the student favorite, is Club Fridays. I challenged every one of my teachers to develop an interesting and engaging club that would help capture every student that we have. So out of a staff of about 40, I've got 40 different clubs, and they meet for 48 minutes every Friday. And it could be where they go in and game for 48 minutes. It could be a gaming club where they play Super Mario World or Madden or whatever for 48 minutes. That's 48 minutes. I say, as a principal, I'm going to step back. I'm going to let my teachers and kids have fun. And I'm going to tell you that 48 minutes on Fridays is what people talk about. But it brings a sense of inclusion. It brings a sense of equity. And our kids, and you mentioned at the beginning of this show, when I first got here, we were around 78, 81% ADA rate. We're now at 93, 4, and 5% every day because kids want to come to school. It's amazing. But we call that Bulldog Block, and it captures every part of our accountability model and then some. And it gives teachers time during the instructional day to do those remediations, to do those accelerations, to do those project PBLs. And they love it. And it's just, we are a learning institution at Perry Central High School, the best way I can put it.
Okay. So just in summary, because you know how I like to take a step back, you guys have implemented what you call Bulldog Block. So every single day for 48 minutes, you have a a different focus. Mondays are those touch base circles for kids to just really connect with how are you doing and let's make sure everybody's being cared for. Tuesdays are level all, where you're doing a targeted career and college planning. Wednesdays are for remediation. So you're going to really work with those kids that are struggling in whatever standards have been identified. Thursday, specific work on the ACT and work keys practices. And then Fridays are club Fridays. 40 clubs with 400 kids. Okay, so let's geek out on master schedules for a second. How do you match students with those places of need during each of those different settings?
So as far as the master schedule, I hand placed every one of my students in the schedule this summer. I spent the entire month of June and July hand placing every one of my students. My goal was to know every one of my students. When I walk down the hallway, I want to know, okay, there's Michael, and Michael has this, and this is his plan. My counselor is so innovative. And I kind of tell her what I want. I call her really, she's my accreditation officer because I am crazy innovative. And it's always good to have her. And I'll call some of my state connects, say, look, I'm doing this. Tell me if I'm safe here, but so it's a good support system. But I handpicked every one of my student schedules. So we have feeder programs for all 4 core subjects. It was a daunting task as far as, having the 400 student count to having 40 clubs and what 10 students go here without overloading. So we put it on a rotation because we have several interesting clubs from culinary. We have gardening clubs and we have political clubs and we have a Bible club. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But what we do is we do a 9-week rotation because there's some clubs that students want to get a taste and feel for throughout the year. So we have a rotation. And our students, I allowed some of my student leaders to develop that rotation for their peers so that they could have some ownership and say, okay, I can't have gaming first 9 weeks, but second 9 weeks, I'm going to be able to pick up with that and I'm going to be able to split it with our athletic leadership program. I mean, it's really, they bought into it. And I'm going to tell you, when you get a group of kids who are excited about school, who have a voice, and a group of teachers says, oh my goodness, I love this. All I got to do is say, this is what I want. And they make it happen and they run with it. And it's a beautiful thing.
Well, Josh, first of all, I just want to say congratulations to you and your school community, your teachers, your students for maximizing the opportunities that every student has for learning and for showcasing. I love that better together to showcasing that, hey, there may be whatever the history and the tradition has been for how you've been treated in the past.
Mm-hmm.
We are all in, or when you show up here, you're going to get the quality and the opportunity at its highest level. Now, because you're an experienced leader, I also want to ask you this question, and you've heard me ask this question to other leaders, but let's talk to that leader who's stepping into a new transition or a new season. A lot of people that listen to the show are veteran leaders, but a lot of listen are aspiring or newer. So if you could sit down with coffee for a leader for a minute or two, what would your takeaways be on what they should keep in mind when they're leading change?
The very first thing that I always think it's so important, and I had this, and I know not everybody has this. A lot of times, well, I was an assistant principal for 9 weeks, and bam, I go right into a building, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I was in my late 20s, but here I am. I tell anybody, aspiring or whether you're seasoned, every decision that you make needs to be made with a worst case scenario in mind. And what I mean by that, it will protect you as a leader, it will protect your school, it will protect the district, and it will protect the students. And you say, well, what does that mean? That means exactly what it says. Every decision that you make in reference to the innovation, to your curriculum, to your master schedule, to students, to your clubs, to your teachers, to your stakeholders, make every decision with the worst case scenario in mind. That will safeguard you, number one, because I've seen a lot of administrators early on get burned, and they've made some decisions without thinking everything through. And I hate to see good leaders fall so early because, well, as you know, as I do, a lot of times in school leadership, they give you a set of keys and you go. And so I would say that number one. And number two, as a principal, as an assistant principal, as a superintendent, director, and I've served in several different capacities. It's not about us. It's not about us. Your time as a student, your time as a classroom teacher is in your past. You're a principal. It's not about you. And it's okay. I had my principal when I was in high school, Will, he always said, Josh, he said, sometimes it's okay to toot your own horn. And it is, and that's not what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is our decision should never be selfish. Our decision should be to maximize the people in which we serve. And I promise you this, and you know this, that if we put people ahead of what we're doing, then that's going to come back and bless you as a leader.
Mm, man.
The first time this school district has ever been considered high performing was 1 month ago when the State Department said, okay, Perry Central High School, Perry County School District, you are a high performing district for the first time in the entire school history. And these people around here were like, wait, what are y'all doing? Because we serve our people.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we've grew 100 points at the high school in 2 years. Where will we be in 2 more years? You know, because it's not about me. It's about the people in which you serve. So being a leader, 1, always be mindful of the decisions you make. And number 2, it's not about us anymore. People in which we serve.
So I'm gonna summarize both those things this way, Josh. 1, safeguard your decisions, because if you can imagine the worst case scenario for what you're getting ready to do, then you're going to have counted the cost.
Mm-hmm.
When you say yes, you know you're saying no to something else. And so you're going to count the cost in every decision to make sure that I'm making the best decision here, but also a decision that is protecting the outcome. And so don't be naive. And then 2, service, not selfish. So make sure that that servant heart, I like to say it this way, that when, if you're leading, that means people should be following. And if you turn around, there's nobody behind you, you're not leading.
Right.
You're not leading. And so it's always about, wherever you're going should always be about the people that you're taking there, not about you, which is, I know I can say that, but then practicing that, looking in the mirror myself and realizing when I wake up and I'm looking at my to-dos and I'm thinking about my wants and I'm thinking about my priorities, you know, it's not like we should ignore the fact that both of us need good health and nutrition and time with our families and all those things that you and I both know, Josh, are part of the balanced leadership. But if the ultimate driver of the decisions that we're making is us, man, it's going to fall so flat. And the outcomes in the meetings are going to be selfish. They're going to be maybe self-serving, but they're certainly not going to make others' lives better.
Yeah. You know, Will, you're always so smart and I enjoy listening to you. I take in a whole lot of different things that you have to say. And I'll just say this, you know, because of you and Jen Schwanke, the way I operate is a lot on what you guys have presented down through the years. So keep doing what you're doing, because it does make an impact. I know you may sometimes think, look, I'm just doing this. Am I really making it? You are making a huge difference.
Well, thank you,
So
Josh.
keep it up.
Well, you're making a difference. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is because there's so much, you know, the further I get away from actually being in a school every single day, it's just charges my batteries to be back in conversations with the people that are in the schools every day, that are making it work, that are making life better for students because of it. As we wrap up this conversation that I don't want to wrap up, I just want this to keep going. So I can't wait to see you, Josh, in person soon so we can keep this conversation going. But I want leaders to be able to connect with you, but I also want you to be able to just share any other parting words of wisdom that you would just want listeners to hold on to in their leadership.
You know, I'm going to tell you, if you are if you're a principal and you're in a situation where you can't grow your school, if you're an assistant principal, you're seeking out to be a principal, if you're a director, and the best sliced bread that I can give anybody, and I've had to learn this, is we have to be honest with ourselves and say, you just don't know what you don't know. And the old book, From Good to Great, I wish everybody could read that book. I had a leader years ago tell me, I don't want to hear a word you have to say until you read this book. If we can humble ourselves and be open, admit, I don't know what I just don't know, and then put in the effort to do research, Surround yourself with seasoned people, not just seasoned people, but people who have a track record, and listen. I think you can get more from that than sitting in your office trying to figure out what I can and can't, try to figure it out yourself. It's okay to say, I don't know. I called a principal the other day, Will, and I said, man, I just don't know. I don't have the answer to this. I've racked my brain. And he and I sat down for over an hour and said, we come up with these things. And then he said, look, we got to present, at Mesa, October 21st. Won't you come up and talk about this? I'm like, what? He said, yeah. But my point is, great collaboration. It's okay not to have the answer. Don't be one of those who walks around and tries to think you got to have all the answers all the time, because we don't. And the sooner you realize that, the better off you'll be.
I love that. And I love it that you brought it full circle, Josh, because you said the best sliced bread you can give is to remember that to admit that you don't know what you don't know. And so reach out, ask for help, keep growing, keep stretching. And you brought it full circle because you just reminded me that, I just have to quote you again. You don't just sit at the table, you eat at the table with the people that you're serving. How can our listeners stay connected with you and your work, my friend?
Well, I'm on Twitter, or the new X, I suppose that's what they say. You can follow me at Principal Yeager. That's just Principal, Yeager. I love Twitter. Twitter's the best professional development there is, or I guess the new X. I like Twitter better, but it's great professional development. You can follow me there at Principal Yeager, or my email. You can reach out to me via email at jyeager, Yeager, and that is at pcsdms.us.
Well, Joshua Yeager, thank you for the work that you're doing, and I stole this language from you, for being the shift, being that transition maker, that transformation maker for your school and for your work. And Principal Matters listeners, we'll put Josh's contact information in the show notes. Until next time, thank you, Josh, for all the amazing things you're doing for your school. And Principal Matters listeners, thank you for doing what matters. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.